Hello guys, welcome to the next session of developing e-commerce application from scratch using Angular and Spring Boot. So till now in this e-commerce application series, we have gone through the many different sessions and we have seen how we can implement different APIs that are required for the e-commerce application in a Spring Boot, and alongside we have worked on the Angular UI also. So after completing the most basic functionalities in the e-commerce application, today I'm just going to work on the most awaited session throughout this series. So in this session, I'm just going to tell you how can you set up this particular project on your local machine. So yes, in this session, I'm just going to share the GitHub repositories where I have uploaded all the codes, and in this session I'll just tell you how you can use that repositories and how we can set up the code on the local machine. So without taking much more time, I'll just take you to the GitHub repository. So there are two different GitHub repositories. The very first is e-commerce YouTube. So this is nothing but a backend or Spring Boot application repository, and then second one is a e-commerce YouTube UI. So this is nothing but a as the name suggests, it is nothing but UI repository, which is nothing but a Angular code, right? So we have to set up these two repositories, and there are a few steps that we have to follow. I'll just tell you those steps also. So meanwhile, I'll just show you how we can set up it. So let me just first of all click on this code button. Over here we have the different options. If you are using the GitHub or Git bash on your local machine, then you can just directly use some Git commands and you can just set up the code or clone the code. Or if you don't have the Git installed on your machine, the option that you can choose is download zip. So it will basically download the zip file of this code, and then you can just unzip it and you can just follow my instructions. As of now, I'm just going to tell you how you can use these with the git commands. So for you to use the git commands, what we have to do is we have to click on this HTTPS, because there are multiple options. We have to choose HTTPS, and then we have to copy this particular link. Now after copying this link, let me just go to maybe some folder over here. Let me just create one new folder, and let me just give the name as e-commerce -YouTube -setup. So let me just give some folder name over here, and then what we have to do is, if you are using the Windows, you can use command prompt or any terminal or maybe the git bash. In Mac, I have to use the terminal. So let me just open the terminal at this particular folder, and then what we have to do is we have to just use a command that is called as a git clone, and after that we have to just paste the link that we have just copied, and let me just wait till the cloning process done. So make sure you are connected to the internet, because it is going to download the code over the internet. Now our backend code or Spring Boot application code is cloned. The next thing that we have to do is we have to do the similar process with the Angular UI code. So again, let me just click on this code, then HTTPS, and let me just copy this particular link. You can also download the zip file. Let me just come to this same terminal. Let me just type git clone, and let me just paste the URL that I have just copied, and let me just wait till it downloads the code from the GitHub and it installs on your local machine. Now we have successfully cloned the Spring Boot application and Angular application code. The next thing that we have to do is we have to just open these folders in a IntelliJ and VS Code. So obviously we have to use these e-commerce YouTube folder in a IntelliJ because it is Spring Boot application code, and then e-commerce YouTube UI code in a UI, we have to use this code in a VS Code because it is an Angular code, right? If you are using like different tools and IDEs, you can just use those. There is no issue at all, right? So let me just do one thing. Let me just open the Visual Studio Code, and then let me just open the folder that we have just cloned. So let me just open this e-commerce YouTube UI, and after that, the very first thing that we have to do is we have to run one command, right? So we have to just use npm install command. Again, make sure you are connected to the internet, because npm install command is going to download the required packages or required dependencies into your Angular application. So we have to make sure that we are connected to the internet. Meanwhile, till this particular process done, what I will just do is I'll just go to the IntelliJ and then I'll just click on open, and then I'll just choose the folder that we have just cloned and let me click on open, and I'll just make it as a trust project, and then again we have to wait till all the processing done, and again make sure you are connected to the internet. Now once the processing done, you will, in the left hand side you will see this particular folder structure. So you will be able to see that different packages are there and different classes are there, right? Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to configure this particular project in order to use it on your local machine, because this is the code that I have done according to my machine, but in some cases your configuration might be the different, so we have to configure it on configure the things like which will work on your machine. So the very first thing that I'm just going to do is I'm just going to use a MySQL workbench. So again, if you are following my series, you must be know that I'm using a MySQL database as a database. So we have to first of all go to the MySQL, and then what we have to do is we have to create the new database. So first of all, let me just quit this MySQL workbench because I just want to show you something, and let me just restart it again, and let me just wait till the application opens. And over here, if you just see the port on which my MySQL is running is 3306, right? So 3306 is nothing but a default port which is used by a MySQL database. In most of the cases it will be a 3306 only, but in some cases if you have changed the port number, then you might have to use that particular port number. Let me just tell you where you have to use. Let me just go to the IntelliJ, and over here let me just go to the resources, and let me just go to the application properties file. Over here, if you just see, the very first property is server.port, which is nothing but whenever you will run this application, it will run on 9090 port. So by default, Tomcat server or Tomcat application runs on 8080 port, but for some reasons I have changed it to the 9090. So if you want to keep this particular property, then you can keep, otherwise you can remove it. But if you just remove it, and if you just try to run this on the 8080 port, then this particular port number you have to configure on the UI side also. I'll just tell you where you have to configure. For example, let's suppose if you just make it as a 8080 and your application is running on the 8080 port, then what you have to do is you have to just come to the VS Code, and then you have to come to the, for example, services, and let me just open this product service TS. Inside the product service TS, if you just see on line number 16, we have configured one API. In this API, I have used a port number 9090. So why I have used 9090? Because my Tomcat server is running on this particular port. But in case your Tomcat server is running on a different port, then you have to configure over here. You have to just remove this 9090 and you have to give this port number, like whatever port number you want, and make sure whatever port number you are giving, you have to give this particular port number on every single request that we are making over here. So you have to give it on line number 16, then 20, and then 24, something like this. And there are other service files also. If needed, you have to change the port number there also. So you have to change the port number in all the files, all the required files. And in most of the cases, it will be the service files only. So you can just take a look to the product service file, user auth service file, and user service file. And in that, you have to just change the port number. The next thing that I just wanted to highlight is there is a URL of the database. So if you just see, we are using the MySQL database. That is the reason we have used a URL as per the MySQL database, right? So we have to just use JDBC MySQL, then we have to use localhost, and then we have to use this 3306. So again, 3306 is nothing but a port number on which MySQL is running, and by default the port number for MySQL is 3306 only. In some cases, if you have changed it, then you have to give that particular port number over here, and then we have to just give the database name. So we haven't created the database name, so let me just create the database first, and let me just give that name over here. But before that, let me just tell you one more thing about this username and password. So over here we have used a username and password. So we have to give the username and password which we use to log in into a MySQL. For example, so if I just come to my 3306, then it is asking me for the username. So username is root and it is asking me for the password. So let me just give the password. In my case, password is nothing but root@123. So whatever username and password you are using while logging into the MySQL, whatever username and password you are using, you have to give that username and password over here. So in my case, username is root and password is root@123. So this is why I have mentioned this root and root@123 over here. And let me just click on OK. Now let me just wait till it logs in, and after that we have to create one new database. So let me just click on the right hand side section, left hand side section. Let me just make it as a create schema, and let me just make it as a e-commerce demo, and let me just copy this particular name, and let me just make it apply, and let me just make it apply again. And if you just see in the left hand side section, e-commerce demo database is created. Let me just right click on it and let me just set it as a default schema. As of now, there are no any tables involved. So in a moment we are just going to see many different tables created in this database. Now let me just come back to the IntelliJ and let me just paste the database name that we have just created over here, and let me just click on save. The next thing that we have to do is on line number 5 there is a platform. We have to mention it as a MySQL. Then on line number 6 we have to use the property. So there is one property that is called as Spring JPA Hibernate DDL Auto. So there are two different values which we can give over here. So we can give update or we can give the create, right? So as of now, let me just make it as a create, because this is the very first time that we are running the application. That is the reason we have to make it as a create. And once the very first time you run the application, then after next time onwards you have to make it as an update only. So I'll just tell you what I'm trying to say over here, but as of now let me just make it as a create only. And now let me just save these changes. Now once you've done these particular changes, we can just start the application. So how we can start this? We can just go to the e-commerce application class, and this e-commerce application class is nothing but a main class because it contains the main method. Let me just right click on it and let me just make it as a run e-commerce application Java file, and let me just wait till my application starts. And if we can just wait, and if at all we get any exception or error, then we can resolve that particular exception. So if you just see, there are many different queries which are executing behind the scenes, and this is nothing but a Hibernate queries which are getting executed behind the scenes. Now if you just see, we got one message like Tomcat server started on 9090 port, and then lastly it will just show you started e-commerce application in 10.10 seconds. Now once you got the message, it basically means that the application started successfully. Now in order to verify whether your application started successfully, one thing that you can just do is you can just go to the database, you can just make it as a refresh, and then you can just go to the tables. Under the tables, you may now find different tables created over here, and in user table you may find some data also. So if I just show you, like yes, so I'll just show you the data over here, but maybe you can, if you just see, like it is showing me, okay, not an issue. But as of now, if you just see, many different tables created over here, and which basically means that our application started successfully, right? The next thing that we can just do is we can just start our application, our UI application. So how we can just do is we can just open one new terminal, and then we can just run one command that is called as a npm run start. In your case, you might have to use ng serve command. So whatever command works for you, you can just use that particular command and you can just start the application. So let me just wait till the compilation done successfully, and in the initial time it may take some time to compile all these libraries and all. So let me just wait, and yes, now application is compiled successfully. So what we can just do is we can just go to the Google Chrome and we can just hit localhost 4200, and we can just wait till the application is started. So if you just see, the application is started, we have the login and we have the different set of actions over here. Let me just tell you by using the login. So in order to log in, we have default users already created in our code. So I'll just tell you where the code is. So inside the services package, we have the class that is called as the user service. Inside the user service, if you just see, we have written some code which will create some default users for us. So it will, like, there is password, username, that is admin123, and password admin@pass. So if you just use these credentials, you will be able to log in as an admin. Or if you just use Raj123 as a username and Raj@123 as a password, then you will be able to log in as a user, right? So there are two different users that we are just creating by default on our system, so that we can at least see how the application basically works. So let me just try to log in with the admin. So let me just make it as admin123 and then admin@pass, and let me just paste it over here. Yes, now it is working perfectly fine. We are able to log in with the admin, and as soon as we logged in, we are able to see the different tabs over here, that is home, add new product, show product details, and order information. So all these like how this application basically works and everything, I have shown in the last session itself, where I gave the demo of my application, of this e-commerce application. So you can just check out that particular session and you can just see how you can use the different options and what each option basically means. So as I have already explained, I'm just not going to take much more time, and I'm just not going to explain every single thing again and again, because it will make session very, very lengthy, right? But one more thing I just wanted to highlight is in this e-commerce application, we are using the Razorpay as a payment integration or payment gateway. So you have to configure that Razorpay also. If you just want to use like payment gateway, then you have to use the Razorpay credentials, right? So I'll just tell you how to configure it. So if I just close all these files and if I just go to the order details service, inside the order details service on line number 23 and 24, you will find different set of properties. So very first property is nothing but a key, and second property is nothing but a key secret. So we have to give this key and key secrets over here, which should be a valid key and key secrets. So in order to generate this key and key secrets, we have already seen how we can create the Razorpay account and how we can generate these particular required keys. So I'll just give those links into a description box, and in the right hand side section you can check out those particular sessions. You can generate your own Razorpay key and key secrets, and whatever key and key secrets you will generate, you have to just give those particular key and key secrets over here. So you have to just replace it with your own key and key secrets, then you will be able to use the Razorpay also, right? So this is how you can set up the e-commerce application on your local machine. I hope like I explained every single thing which is involved into this throughout this setup process. I will just give you these GitHub repository links into a description box. You can just check out those links and you can just try to set up this particular project on your machine. I will also suggest one thing: if you just want to learn few more things, you can just try to go through the different sessions which are there in the playlist. You can just try to go through these sessions and you can just try to learn different things. You can just try to create your own code base, and maybe if you need some help, then you can just check out in my GitHub repository, and then you can just write down, maybe you can just compare and write your own code. But the end motive should be at the end you should get some knowledge throughout this particular series. So this is main intention. So that is the intention that I have behind this particular series. If you still have any questions, let me know into a comment section. I'll just try my best to help out in that case. And obviously this is not going to be a last session of this series. In the future we will just try to add some more sessions in this series. Whatever features you want, you can just let me know into a comment section, and if I just get maximum comments, then I will just try to implement those particular features in our e-commerce application. So till then, I hope you enjoyed this session, and I'll see you in the next session.